They say the scariest things are the ones you can't see, the ones hidden in the dark. But what about those that you can see? Those that you can hear, but you can't trust your senses to tell the truth. The things you see aren't really there, while the things that seem absent are right in front of you. Whispers of malintent haunt you, but no one is there. This is the confusion that surrounds you throughout Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, the story of a young Norse warrior fighting through the depths of her own darkness in search of her lost love. Made by Ninja Theory in Cambridge, UK, and released August 8, 2017, Hellblade is a premier example of the power of a small but driven group of people working hard to create something incredible. While there is a small degree of repetitiveness in how the puzzles are solved and only small variations in enemy type throughout the game, Hellblade is a journey that takes the player through an experience that they'll likely not soon forget. Senua is on a rescue mission. It is made clear early in the game that she is trekking deep into the land of mist and fog in search of a way to save the soul of her lover, Dillion, who has been taken from her during a violent raid on her village by warriors from the north. Without giving too much away, Senua feels a strong sense of responsibility for his loss and seeks retribution the only way that she knows how. We also quickly learn that Senua suffers from a curse, one that her mother carried as well. This curse manifests itself as voices in her mind that constantly berate her with hurtful thoughts, evil whispers, and offensive put-downs. With this curse, however, comes another ability, one that she has barely learned how to control. Senua sees the world through a different lens than most, a skewed perception of her surroundings that allowed her to progress in her quests where others would have failed. Multiple times throughout the campaign, there are references made to how others have perceived her as being different from them. Many thought that she had carried a darkness inside of her, and even her father believed that she needed to be removed from the rest of her people to keep them safe. This idea of a curse being a mystical evil plays an important role in how Senua perceives herself and her place in the world. It is the curse that ends up being the true focus of the game. Senua's struggle between what she's experiencing and what is truly in front of her are constantly at odds. She and the player must decide whether or not to trust what they see, and sometimes it can be very difficult to tell what is real. Senua's adventure transforms from an external search for the soul of her lost love to a distressed search for her identity and how she faces a fear that has been inside of her whole life. The black, twisted face of her mental illness shows itself early and often, and her endeavor to be rid of it is what carries Hellblade from beginning to end. In truth, the gameplay of Hellblade is fairly simple. Make it through each area, fight a few enemies, beat the boss at the end, and move on. Before you write off the simplicity, though, allow me to elaborate. Each area that Senua must conquer seems to represent a powerful source of fear that needs to be overcome. Understanding each challenge and outsmarting it is more important than having the strength to brute force your way through. There's always a trick, always some small detail that you need to figure out that will make the light bulb in your head shine bright. There are a few mechanics, though, that are repeated throughout the end of the game, and I think that they could have used a little bit more sparingly. One of the main culprits here is searching for runes. Hellblade loves to lock doors behind symbols. It's Senua's job to find the symbol embedded in the environment, not just as a letter inscribed on the wall, but to use the shapes of trees, rocks, shadows, and halls at the right angle to form the proper shape. In the beginning, this can be very interesting, and the concept reinforces the fact that Senua sees the world in a different way than most of us. Toward the end of the game, however, I feel like we should have moved on to something new, having completed that task nearly a dozen times before. The combat in Hellblade is another beast entirely. Broken down into a few basic moves, besting enemies in Hellblade is more about reflexes than it is about skill. The only abilities that you have are light attacks, heavy attacks, dodge, block, and a multifunctional focus ability. The block also counts as a counterattack. Timing enemies' incoming blows with a counter is one of the most important skills that you can develop, as there are enemies that can rarely be hit any other way. The focus skill is used in a range of interesting ways throughout the story, but I don't want to spoil those for you here. I would say that you don't come to Hellblade for the ruthlessly complex and intricate gameplay, you come for the experience. This is not to say the gameplay is bad, but there just isn't much going into the game in terms of character progression nor elements of experience in any way. Coming from a strong background of RPGs and looter games, this was an interesting transition. It's obvious that the focus here is Senua and her quest, and that is completely okay. world of this game and how you experience it are the backbone of your time as Senua. Before the game begins, a screen appears that says the player would be better off playing with a set of headphones. With the sound having been recorded using a technology called binaural sound to allow for a more three-dimensional sound experience, playing with regular speakers simply would not be the same. The value of this suggestion is felt the moment the game begins. Whispers come from in front, behind, and all around are constantly influencing Senua, trying to convince her that what she is doing is wrong. Exclamations such as, "You're going the wrong way," "She's going to fail," "She doesn't know what she's doing," are never ending. One of the trials later in the game is almost entirely dependent on sound and the direction that it's coming from. I played through parts of this area with my eyes closed just to test it and was surprisingly successful. In addition to the incredible audio Hellblade provides, the environments you are required to navigate provide a version of hell and the afterworld that I did not expect. These places felt surprisingly real, tangible, and believable, but also perfectly matched to the theme of the Guardian that I was required to fight at the end of each section. For example, early in the game you are required to fight against a Norse Jotun named Surtur, known for a flaming sword to be used during Ragnarok. Throughout the trial that must be completed to face him, piles of burning bodies, smoke, and flaming visions plague your way. This sort of environmental storytelling, in addition to the actual telling of legends through lore stones scattered throughout Helheim, helps shape the world around Senua in a way that makes me feel like I could experience every step right alongside her. For me, Hellblade can most aptly be labeled as Game of the Year I could barely bring myself to play. This is not a put down on its quality in any way, but more speaking to its power to apply stress. Between the never-ending voices, the extremely intimidating character models, the deep drums and chanting that make up the incredible soundtrack, and the heaps of bodies strung up and hewn all around you, Hellblade does everything within its power to make Senua, and you as well, want to turn back. The game tries to make you give up. Senua's struggle is your struggle, and in many ways your pain is her pain. The power of Hellblade is not in its complex gameplay or its deep systems, but in the depth of the emotion that it literally drags you through. There are times where Hellblade feels like you are close to your goal, but are slogging through mud and muck and blood and bones just to get a chance at reaching out. Moving forward is a challenge, and that's the point. You are not a player playing as Senua. You are Senua, and her journey is not to be taken lightly.